Fiona, do you want to give us a quick summary of your writing career?
Hi, Fiona. Nice to be here on this show. There's no such thing as quick. Or okay, quick. My writing career. I started when I was 6 years old.
That's so neat. You were always a writer, really.
Well, some form. I'm youngest in a family, and I just got my brother and sister involved in radio plays right beginning. We would do plays in front of our parents, and I would write and direct, and they would act. It was so fun, and so I've been doing that ever since. Well, not that, but I started writing seriously quite young. And I started with short stories. I actually wrote a novel, dystopia, that took place in Toronto, actually, and tried to schlep it around, and it didn't really go anywhere because I was 16. So,
so what time frame would this have been? The 19 what?
Oh, 1960s.
No, okay.
What was I? 1970s, something like that, 60s, 70s.
Okay.
And I got into short stories and I started publishing them. And then from there, I got into finally writing my novels.
So you were just saying that you write fiction and nonfiction.
Yeah, I was writing, I was just saying that I write both, and I usually end up focusing on one and then the other. So I basically alternate them. And because of that, I've been able to be quite prolific and produce a book a year pretty much, which is actually a lot. So in the past 14 years, I've produced 14 books.
And you also, in your fiction work, is there a particular genre that you enjoy or that you favor?
Yeah, I've been known to write science fiction and fantasy in my fiction work, but really there's a genre that sort of overlooks that, and it's called eco-fiction or climate fiction. And to be honest, that's really what I've been writing without realizing it. Those terms weren't out there when I was starting to write, but they become terms now that are quite prevalent. And it's something that it was always on my mind. I was an environmentalist when I was a little kid. I was out there picking up litter and putting posters up in my school and telling people to get global and all that kind of stuff, and fighting pollution essentially. And it informed my career choices. I was going to go into environmental law, and then I decided I didn't want to be a lawyer for various reasons, and went into the environment, into ecology and biology, and became a limnologist, a scientist who studies fresh water, and basically with the idea of helping us have a better relationship with water. Ended up working for environmental consulting firms, looking at impacts of mining and pulp mills and that sort of thing. And just kept writing in that area. So most of my work are, I guess some of them are dystopias because they're cautionary tales about the environment and our treatment of it and our relationship with the environment and technology.
So I was going to ask you about your current work in progress. So are you in a nonfiction cycle or a fiction cycle right now?
I'm in a fiction cycle right now. I just did a nonfiction. Nonfiction was actually a guidebook on writing, which is in fact about setting. It's called The Ecology of Story.
Cool.
And right now I'm actually working on the I guess it's the sequel to this book, A Diary in the Age of Water, which is the book that just came out.
Okay.
And, came out with Inanna Publications in 2020, the year of the plague. So this book that I'm talking about, I wrote during the year of the plague. So it's not about a plague necessarily, although actually plague does enter into it. In fact, COVID does enter into it. Is part of the story, but it is again much about water. I mean, I am about water. I'm a limnologist, I'm an ecologist, and I have a real affinity for water. fresh water, and I've been studying it ever since I was a little kid who was scared of water. And I triumphed over that into fascination and made that into a career. And these last couple of books, the book prior to the nonfiction book prior to that one was Water Is, a giant 500-page book about water, a biography of water. That was my nonfiction. And then I wrote this fiction. And so, yeah, I'm going back and forth. Yeah, water is really important, and we're learning that it's really important, and it's out there in the news. Water is traded in the stock exchange. It's treated as a commodity, and yet it is a God-given right for all life, and it's life-giving. It has over 70 anomalous properties, and almost every one of those anomalous properties are life-giving. And an example of an anomalous property is, you know how water exists in 3 different forms?
Yes. Right. And it's one of those interesting ones where the solid form is lighter than the liquid form, which makes it very unusual. Yeah. That's why ice cubes float.
Exactly. And then there's all these other really cool things about water that in every state, and moving from state to state, it's also anomalous.
So what do you see is, because Canada has one of the world's biggest, or if not the world's biggest treasury of fresh water. How do you ideally see our role moving forward as a protector of this amazing resource?
Good question, because that is presumably could be and should be Canada's role. We are stewards of over 1/5 of the fresh water in the world, and most of that is locked up in glaciers. A lot of it is in lakes. We have, part of the Great Lakes is here, and we have so many huge lakes up in the boreal forest. It's linked up with how we treat the boreal forest, incidentally. We are not very good at that right now. We're active cutting, active damming, and diverting water. And those 2 things are really playing havoc with the water that we have here. To be honest, we are all stewards. Nobody owns the water. This whole concept of commodifying water is so skewed toward ownership and property and being greedy and all these kinds of things, which we need to be shifting over to a more indigenous knowledge way of looking at things, where we are looking after something that's precious, that doesn't belong to us, really. It doesn't belong to anyone. And water shows us this anyway by moving all the time. Water is in constant motion. And so it just so happens that a lot of it hangs out in Canada for a goodly amount of time, which makes us ultimately great stewards for the water, because it does hang out where we are a lot of the time. As protectors of the water, we can only attempt to be wise about how we treat the water when the water is in our country. And we're not really doing a very good job right now. We honestly aren't. We have a lot of it. We have a lot of wilderness. And as a result of that, we are treating water well by default. But if we were like the States, if we were everywhere where water is, we would be, water would be in the same position there.
We're only saved by our own low population and great land mass.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Having said that, to give us some credit, we are a northern people, and we are more northerly in our focus. We are more conscious of our environment. If you're to believe the census, ever so often they ask these questions: what's most valuable to you? What is most important? A lot of Canadians, most Canadians, will say the environment is very high on their list. It's just that, unfortunately, we have a settler mentality, a colonial capitalist mentality, where we're not doing what we're thinking, if you know what I'm saying.
Yes, our ideology and our actions don't go together.
Yeah, So we have some learning to do.
Now, we did kind of briefly touch on your work on fiction. You said it was a sequel, and you said it was fiction. Is there anything else you wanted to share with us, or are you still very much in the
reading of it,
fleshing out stages?
Yeah, I am. I'm sort of halfway through. It's really funny. It's like I said, it comes after this one, which takes place both in the near future and very far future, about 4 generations of women and their relationship with water. That's what this book is about, A Diary in the Age of Water, 4 generations of women in the Toronto area, in fact. So the main book is a diary by a limnologist. And yeah, she's very cynical, and she has a daughter who she's overprotective of, and she has a mother who was a crazy activist. And you know what happens? The daughter becomes the crazy activist, of course, she's trying to protect. And the cycle goes on, right? It's that kind of thing. This sequel picks up on some of the characters, some of the very minor characters of that world in the diary, and take them beyond. So it's across Canada, and even like I was saying before, I'm halfway through. The first part wrote itself so quickly, and incorporates basically 4 main characters and where they are, and they're across Canada. One's in Nova Scotia, another's in BC, another one's up north. She's a Gwich'in up north in the Arctic, and someone else is in Toronto. And each of their stories is then they merge together and create something else. So that's the part where I'm getting to. So it spans a long time period. It includes the Halifax explosion.
Okay.
Which was so traumatic and huge, and includes a plague, includes COVID, like I said. And yeah, I'm having a lot of fun with it. My one piece of advice, I seem to give this over and over again, because I think it's perhaps the main piece for me that's kept me going, is write with passion. Write, a lot of people say write what you know. Those two in some ways are the same thing, really, because you can do all kinds of research on things that you don't know and bring that in, but to know in your soul, in your heart, something that's important that you need to write about, that's more what I mean by write what you know. And if you're passionate about what you're writing about, so it could be about anything, really. It doesn't have to be, it could be about a global catastrophe. It could be about someone's journey with abuse. It could be anything. That needs to come from the heart. And I guess that's what I'm really talking about, where the passion comes. Perhaps write about something that has meaning to you, that's really important to you. And it will do 2 things. It will keep you on track through those rejections. It will keep you, that comes after. It will keep you on track even before those rejections to finish and to complete it. Because if you don't have a strong feeling about what you're telling, then you won't persist, because there's far too many things that will keep us from persisting. We'll get depressed with COVID. We'll get distracted with our jobs or our life, or something's going on, and we will tell ourselves the story that this isn't that important, right? It's just a hobby. Someone will, we'll let someone tell us it's a hobby. No. And this is where the strength comes from, that passion, that need to tell that story, and the knowledge that with that need to tell that story story is unique and important for others. And the irony, the funny thing about metaphor is that the more unique it is, the more universal it is, the more it will resonate with others. If you look at great scientists, you will find in almost every case, and I'm going to suggest in every case, that their science is also informed by art, that they are creative in some way, that they are artistic, and they bring that artistry and that creativity and that original thinking and that curiosity with them into their science. And that's what makes their science great, because they're willing to look outward. The two are much more linked than we think. We tend to try, like you say, compartmentalize things so that we can better understand them. But the irony is we better understand them by bringing them together and integrating them.